Well, hey there, my friend. Welcome back. Or just welcome if this is your first time tuning in. As always, I am honored to be sharing this space with you. It's our little IBD mom connected corner of the universe. Now, today is all about demystifying, debunking, decoding the low FODMAPs diet. And chances are that you have heard of it before. You may have even dabbled in it. But beyond that, there's just so much we don't understand about this diet. Who is it really for? Does it heal IBD? Where is there actual information that you can trust, accurate information that you can trust about this way of eating? With so many questions and frankly, so much misinformation out there about FODMAPs, I thought it was time that we got real about how the low FODMAP diet works so that you can once and for all decide if this diet is even one that you should pay attention to. And most importantly, help you make up your mind if it's worth your time and effort. So the truth is that a low FODMAP diet, it only recently made it into the conversation in IBD circles. Technically, it's a diet for those with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. But because so many people outside of our circle, they don't actually know the difference between IBS and IBD, you know I'm right. It's been thrown into the mix as well. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have its place within the IBD community. It's just important for us to get clear right off the bat that this diet, it's not a cure for IBD, no matter what you've heard. So with that in mind, you might be thinking, then why are we even talking about this? Why are we talking about this diet if it can't help my IBD? Hold up just a second, dear one, because although it can't cure IBD, a low FODMAP diet, it does have tremendous potential to have an impact on how IBD shows up in your body. And I don't know if you have seen this, but in the last couple of years, our doctors, they seem to be jumping on the low FODMAP train as well. More gastroenterologists that specialize in IBD, they're starting to talk about it as they start to learn more about the impact of FODMAPs on our digestive health. So now that your ears may be perked up a little bit because, hey, maybe there's actually something worthwhile in this FODMAP thing for you, let's begin by getting really clear on what we're talking about here. What exactly are these FODMAPs and why are they potentially harmful for you? So the term FODMAP, it stands for, and we're going to get technical for just a second here, it stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polysaccharides. So that's the technical definition, and you're probably saying, great, but what the heck does that mean? So let's break it down and get really simple. In simple terms, FODMAPs are short-chain carbohydrates that are resistant to digestion. That's it. They're carbs that are hard to digest. Simple as that. So instead of being absorbed into our bloodstream, where normally fat, proteins, and carbs are supposed to end up to give us the nutrients that we need for energy and vitality and just day-to-day healthy living, these types of carbohydrates, they end up setting up camp in your intestines. And then, unless you do something to get rid of them, they live pretty much this fairly cushy life there. Basically, the bacteria from the carbohydrates, they're just barca-lounging, Netflixing and chilling, and I mean that in the most PG sense of the word. They're just chilling in your intestines. Yay, right? That's a pleasant thought. Well, it gets even better. I said that sarcastically, of course, but it gets even better because your gut bacteria, partiers like they are, like a good wine, they then ferment these special types of carbohydrates, these FODMAPs, they ferment inside your intestines. And these bacterial critters, they are not good drunks. They're not good winos. They go wild all over your intestines, wreaking havoc. They create gas and bloating and abdominal pain and other uncomfortable GI, along with non GI symptoms for those of us with sensitive bellies. So these FODMAPs, they have the potential to be kind of sucky. That's the medical term for it, kind of sucky. And who wants a fermented wino gut critter inviting all of his friends into your intestines for a fart party? Not fun. Oh no, not fun. So while scientists and practitioners have known for a while that FODMAPs are a common trigger for those of us with IBS, and let me just digress for a second because we're going to get into my feelings on what IBS actually is in just a bit. But for now, we're going to call it IBS. So hold on to that thought there if you're thinking what I'm thinking. The FODMAP role in Crohn's and colitis, it isn't widely recognized by science, but I have to call foul on this stance. And many doctors are joining with me because the reality is that many of us with IBD also experience IBS-like symptoms, or what a lot of doctors will refer to as the overlap of IBS and IBD. It's this link, this IBS symptom, IBD diagnosis link. That's the reason why it's critical for us to understand FODMAPs so well. So what do we know for sure so far? We now know exactly what FODMAPs are, hopefully in their most simplest of terms, and we know why, even though they typically they are related to problems for those with IBS, we know why we should care about FODMAPs too. In today's episode, we're going to take this a bit deeper. We're going to take this conversation a little bit deeper. We're going to explore what a low FODMAP diet tends to look like. We're going to do a bunch of debunking. We're going to debunk a bunch of low FODMAP diet myths, and then hopefully in the process, you'll begin to gain insight on if FODMAPs are something that you should be thinking about. Are they something that should be on your radar? Okay, let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, so I mentioned exactly what FODMAPs are in a general sense, but that still doesn't get to the heart of what foods are high in FODMAPs and what foods are low. So let's go ahead and get some actual examples of what kinds of foods we're talking about here. Now remember, FODMAPs, those are specific carbohydrates that, due to their poor absorption in the small intestine, they end up in the colon, where they start this fermenting party that I talked about, leading to too much bad bacteria. And then that leads to those lovely symptoms: gas, bloating, pain, etc., etc. So what types of foods are causing all this mischief? And which ones are the well-behaved children of the FODMAP world? It would be nice if all high FODMAPs were in like one category, maybe something like all red foods are high in FODMAPs, or all processed foods are high in FODMAPs, but nope, it's not that easy. And this is why knowing what's high and what's low is so stinking tricky. You really need a reference guide next to you at all times until you get used to it by looking a particular food up over and over. It's the repetition of it that finally helps you learn what's what. But there's some notoriously high FODMAP foods you should absolutely be aware of. Foods like apples, garlic, onions, and wheat. Those are all high FODMAP foods. And if you're thinking, I tend to have reactions in some way when I eat those foods, then maybe this is something for you to think about. Now, that's just a few high FODMAP foods, and I promise you I'm going to make sure you have access to a much more complete list before our time together is over. But seriously, it would take the whole episode to go through each and every high FODMAP food. That's just a starter list. But now, what foods are low in FODMAPs? And again, just a sampling, but we're talking about foods like carrots, cucumbers, grapes, and oranges. These are all lower in FODMAPs. And since we're talking about specifics here, let's take this what foods have high FODMAPs and what foods don't. Let's just take that thought to the next level. What's really fascinating about using a low FODMAP diet is that parts of the same food can differ in FODMAP content. Let's take a leek, for example. So, for instance, the white part of a leek is high in FODMAPs, while the green part is low in FODMAPs. As you can imagine, this insanely complicated FODMAP maze can make navigating the diet without a good resource quite challenging. And again, I've got what you need for that, and I promise you I'm going to be sharing it with you soon. Just a quick interruption. We will get back to the podcast in a second. I'm wondering, are you like many of us with Crohn's and colitis? You're turning to food to help heal your gut, but you're just feeling really overwhelmed by the myriad of gut healing diets out there. There's gluten-free and dairy-free and paleo gaps, and it can be really confusing and frustrating and leave you feeling disheartened about which diet is the right one for you. And I've been there myself. That's why I created the Ultimate IBD Diet Decoder Quiz to help you find your best diet for your unique needs. Now, maybe you've tried one of these diets, but you gave up quickly because they were just too strict or they didn't fit with your lifestyle. Here's the truth. There is no one-size-fits-all diet, but there is one best diet for you. And the best diet for you isn't just about your symptoms. It's about your lifestyle and your personality too. Are you ready to find the gut healing diet that fits you like a glove? Head on over to KarenHaley.com/quiz to take my ultimate IBD diet decoder quiz. It's free and it only takes 3 minutes. Discover what you've been meant to be eating to put your IBD in its place. That's KarenHaley.com/quiz. And now back to the show. So now, what I want you to do is just start thinking. I want you to just start thinking about the few foods that I mentioned, just to start putting some FODMAP puzzle pieces together in your mind. Let me also help you get your gears turning to help you with just the insight of all of this, to just be able to just insightfully bowl this over by telling you who a low FODMAP diet tends to help. I think that will help you as well. See if this picture fits for you. This diet is particularly beneficial for those with chronic digestive symptoms that can't be easily explained or resolved through standard medical approaches. This is where that IBS term comes into play. The doctors, they know you're having symptoms, but they can't pinpoint where they're coming from. Now, if this sounds a lot like you, a low FODMAP diet may be the missing piece that you have been waiting for. But it isn't just those with IBS-like symptoms that should think about FODMAPs. No, I mentioned earlier that those of us with IBD should think about this diet as well. And that's because IBDers, they're also prone to additional gut challenges like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or candida, a fungal overgrowth in the intestine. And both have the potential to show up inside the gut, but also outside the gut as well, with symptoms like skin rashes and brain fog, mood irregularity, poor concentration, anxiety, and the list goes on and on. So even if you haven't been given an official combination IBS, IBD diagnosis, you may still want to think about the role a low FODMAP diet could play in your life. Now, as we well know, doctors might not routinely test for these conditions like SIBO and candida. Even when they do test, they might not use the most effective testing, which can lead to false negatives, which often leads then, of course, as the patient, to confusion and overwhelm and feelings of just being alone, isolated, because you are continuing to struggle without a clear path forward. So again, this absolutely bears repeating. While the low FODMAP diet isn't designed to treat IBD directly, understanding what's going on at the root level of your illness and then understanding the diet's potential benefits, it can be really crucial for really anybody that has Crohn's or colitis. When you have knowledge like this, it can then empower you to manage your symptoms, and it can help you advocate for more comprehensive care from your healthcare provider. And I have to say, at its heart, a low FODMAP diet, it offers a structured approach to help you just identify your dietary triggers. It can help you reduce symptoms and improve the quality of your life. That is positive news. And it's, I gotta say, capital H, huge, because it can lead to massive transformation. But this diet is not without its downsides. It's not without its pitfalls. And it's important, I think, that we talk about those as well. Imagine that you've just discovered through a series of trials that a low FODMAP diet can benefit you. So you're feeling hopeful, maybe a bit excited even, to finally have a path forward. But then you hit a wall. You hit a wall of overwhelming and contradictory information. One source claims a food is low in FODMAPs, another source says it's high. And in the world of FODMAPs, this happens way too often. It really does. Who do you trust? Navigating the low FODMAP diet, it can be like walking through a minefield of misfortune and misinformation, especially if you are a thorough researcher like me and you look at multiple sources. So this is why so many find themselves stuck. So many find themselves unsure of what they can safely eat without it triggering their symptoms. And the confusion is real. It stems from a lack of standardized FODMAP information. It really does. But for argument's sake, let's just say for argument's sake that you finally find a great list. You have a great list of high and low FODMAP foods. You're all set, right? Well, navigating all the rules of this particular diet, it can definitely have a learning curve. I have clients that come to me all the time saying, what is up with this diet? Why does it have to be so complicated? It's almost as challenging as getting a PhD. Plus, if the diet itself wasn't challenging enough, let's talk about the myths that are floating out there surrounding FODMAPs in general. Some of these myths that are circulating around the internet can seriously derail you and definitely misguide and discourage those who might benefit from the diet most. Oh, that really frustrates me. So what I want to do next is let's just go ahead and bust the top 7 FODMAP myths that I hear over and over in my practice, in my community, and just around the gut health Google space. So let's set the record straight. So again, so that you can have the right information to help you decide if a low FODMAP diet is the right diet for you. We'll start with myth number 1. Myth number 1 is a low FODMAP diet is a cure for bacterial imbalance. A low FODMAP diet is a cure for bacterial imbalance. Let's go ahead and debunk this myth. So the answer is no, although it does help when you have bacterial imbalance in your gut, it doesn't cure or even treat the actual dysbiosis. A low FODMAP diet is a symptom reliever. Let me repeat that because this is a big myth that I hear over and over again. It's a symptom reliever. It will give you enough relief that you then have the energy and the stamina to put towards getting to the root of your ultimate gut issues. But it is not a cure or even a treatment. It is a symptom reliever. It's more of a stopgap, if you will. And if you stop this diet and you haven't done the work to get your guts back on track, balancing your bacterial imbalances along the way, everything will go back to the way it was before. So that this is really a huge myth busted. This is a huge point. I cannot stress that one enough. All right, let's move on to talk about myth number 2. And myth number 2 goes like this. If it works, I need to stay on it forever. If it works, I need to stay on it forever. Okay, let's debunk this one too. No way. It is absolutely not meant to be your forever diet. Can you imagine being on this diet forever? If you've tried this diet, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is not something you want to stay on forever. That's not the goal. That would be some really serious over dedication. The goal of a low FODMAP diet is to give yourself some time, some symptom relief while you are working on the root causes of your digestive issues. Now, once enough healing has taken place, the goal is to then move on to a more sustainable, gut healthy, the whole body healthy diet. That's the goal. All right, so myth busted. Let's talk about myth number 3. Myth number 3 goes like this. The low FODMAP diet is for everyone with IBD. The low FODMAP diet is for everyone with IBD. Let's debunk this myth because this ain't true either. The low FODMAP diet is specifically designed for those with irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. That's what it was designed for, which in my opinion is a diagnosis of convenience. For our medical system, it's a diagnosis of convenience that doesn't have this medical system that doesn't have the tools to probe deeper to find out what's really behind your IBS-like symptoms. And it's not necessarily effective for everyone with IBD. So while it may help alleviate symptoms like bloating or gas or abdominal pain or bowel challenges like constipation or diarrhea, it's not a universal solution for all digestive symptoms related to Crohn's or colitis. Despite what so many internet gut gurus want you to believe, there is no one-size-fits-all IBD diet. So is the patient saying to you, well, I don't really know if it works, but it works for some, so why don't you try it? It's largely unhelpful. Instead, providers need to probe deeper to see if this diet is actually warranted and worth trying based on science, not based on throwing spaghetti at a wall. Okay, so that's myth number 3, busted. Let's talk about myth number 4. Myth number 4 is this. All high FODMAP foods are bad for your gut. All high FODMAP foods are bad for your gut. This is not true either, so let's go ahead and debunk this myth. High FODMAP foods are not inherently bad for everyone. In fact, many of them contain prebiotics that promote the growth of beneficial bacteria. The low FODMAP diet, it's about symptom relief. It's about symptom management, not demonizing otherwise healthy foods. And especially because many of the high FODMAP foods are actually, in fact, healthy. The goal is to get you back to this, to get you healed, to get your gut healed so that you can get back to those foods as soon as possible. So myth number 4, debunked. Hey there, it's Karen popping into the episode. I want to thank you so much for tuning into the Cheeky podcast for moms with IBD today. You know, the great information that we're dishing out on this pod is exactly the same type of conversations I get to have with my clients every day. And if you're ready to take your IBD healing journey to the next level and move into being the mom you always dreamed you'd be, then hop on over to KarenHaley.com/consult and book your free IBD consultation with me today. Remember, my mom had to be a little bit different and spell my name with a Y. So that's KarenHaley.com/consult. Now, on our call, we will dive into what you're struggling with most right now and make a plan for how we can work together to help you achieve your big, bold, beautiful, life-transforming goals. No more sitting on the sidelines, waiting for that miracle cure to magically happen. You've got what it takes to do this, mama. You just need a little nudge in the right direction. And I've got your back. KarenHaley.com/consult. And now back to the show. Okay, let's talk about myth number 5 now. And myth number 5 goes like this. The low FODMAP diet is all or nothing. The low FODMAP diet is all or nothing. Not true. So let's go ahead and debunk this myth as well. The low FODMAP diet, when it's done right, is highly individualized and does not have to be all or nothing. Once you've identified your triggers through the elimination and then the reintroduction phase, you can then reintroduce many higher FODMAP foods that your body tolerates. Plus, I really like to just call a low FODMAP diet, I like to call it a diet of insight. It's not about depriving yourself of everything. It's about getting solid, reliable information to help you determine if a particular food is low, moderate, or high in FODMAPs. So then you can determine for yourself if it's something that you want to eat. It's not about complete deprivation. It's about insight into what works for your body and what doesn't. So myth number 5 is busted. Okay, myth number 6 surrounding the low FODMAP diet. The diet is complicated and impossible to follow. The diet is complicated and impossible to follow. Not true, so let's go ahead and debunk this myth as well. So yes, you might remember earlier I did say that for some it can be challenging. It can be challenging for various reasons, but it doesn't have to be. So while the low FODMAP diet can initially seem a little bit overwhelming, if you have reputable resources or you're working with someone that's very familiar with the ins and outs of this diet, you will be set up for low FODMAP diet success. I have my favorite reputable FODMAP resources that I'm going to share with you. Plus, if you're stuck on this diet, I want you to reach out. Definitely reach out to me or another practitioner who can help guide you, who can hold your hand, who can take you step by step through the diet. It is so much easier with a buddy by your side. It is worth it to give you the peace of mind that if you are putting all of this enormous work in, you know that what you're doing right. Okay, so that's myth number 6, and that one we busted as well. Okay, let's talk about the last myth, and that's myth number 7. Myth number 7 goes like this. Once I've had my low FODMAP time, I'm good to go. Once I've had my low FODMAP time, I am good to go. GTG, baby. Let's go ahead and debunk this myth as well. So following a low FODMAP diet, it's just the first step in healing. Remember, it's not a cure diet. It's about giving your body the time and the space that it needs so you can probe deeper to get to the root of your digestive challenges. And once you've done that, it's time to begin reintroducing some of the higher FODMAP foods slowly. And this is called the reintroduction phase, and it's just as important as the diet itself. So during reintroduction, hopefully you'll be able to then find foods that you can now eat, foods that were problematic for you in the past. But you'll likely also find foods that are just never going to work for you, no matter what. IBD is still a factor in your life. A cautiously optimistic, albeit sensitive belly, it's still something you're going to want to be careful with. I have got those foods myself. I've got those foods myself in my life that are just never going to work for me, no matter how healed I am. We all have them. And reintroducing foods slowly back into your diet, that is the key. That's the key to knowing which foods work for you and which ones don't. It's all good. It's all insight, and it's all information to help you know your body as well as you possibly can. One last thing that I want to mention with this particular myth is that with the kind of types of conditions that we're talking about that are at the root of you needing to follow a low FODMAP diet, those conditions I've mentioned earlier, things like SIBO, things like Candida, root cause treatment during this time where you're on the diet, it might need to be repeated a couple times or even a few times. Those gut bug critters, the ones that have set up that constant party in your gut, they are skilled. They are absolutely skilled. They are skilled at evading the anti-party police. They have this cozy, warm place to proliferate in your belly, and they will fight tooth and nail to survive. It's like that annoying house guest that won't take the hint when the party's over, and they linger longer than every guest in your house. We've all had experiences with that friend or that family member before. It takes a delicate dance to finally eradicate bacterial imbalance. And sometimes we need more time than we thought to truly get to the heart of the issue. So if you are currently in the trenches with this, healing your gut from these root cause IBD triggers, and maybe you're on your second or your third round of antimicrobial herbals while you're also on a low FODMAPs diet, I just want to say take heart and know that you can beat this. Healing sometimes just takes a little bit longer than we want it to. Okay, so that's the big seven. The 7 biggest myths about the low FODMAP diet. All of them busted. So now, how are you feeling? How are you feeling about this diet? Are you feeling maybe a little less confused, a little more clear on if it's worth your time? These myths, they can create unnecessary barriers for you. They really can, making what actually can be a potentially helpful tool seem daunting or just not worth the effort. So that's why understanding what the diet really entails, as well as what it can do and what it cannot do, is so crucial. So crucial to help you decide if this is the right path for you. So as we wrap up today, we wrap this all up in a nice, neat little bow, everything we talked about today, with your head maybe just still swimming with FODMAPs information. Now is the best time for me to share my favorite FODMAP resources with you. If this information has intrigued you, if you are just wondering if a low FODMAP diet might be just what you're looking for, I've got a great resource to share with you. It goes further in depth about what FODMAPs are, who should avoid them, and it also gives you a trusted list of known high FODMAP foods that you might want to look out for. It also has a section for further trusted resources if you really want to dive into this, if you want to dive into the deep end on what's high, what's moderate, what's low in FODMAPs, to help give you the best chance of success on this diet. Like I mentioned previously, there's a lot of FODMAP disinformation out there, and I want you to have access to the most reliable sources available. You can get your hands on my brand new Low FODMAPs resource guide by going to KarenHaley.com/FODMAP. That's KarenHaley.com/FODMAP. And remember, my mom had to be a little bit different and spell my name with a Y. So it's KaryNHaley.com/FODMAP. FODMAP. I'm here for you, my friend. If you have any FODMAP related cues, message me on Instagram at IBD Health Coach, at IBD Health Coach. I'm happy to guide you through this confusing and often misunderstood diet. Oh boy, it can be a doozy. Let's just get that clarity. Let's get you set up for success together. No more FODMAP myths, my friend. No more FODMAP disinformation. You've got this. You've got this. And I am here to help if you need me. Until we meet again, I'm wishing you a cheeky and healthy gut healing journey. Chat soon.